Hello and welcome to live post-game coverage of Florida State basketball presented by the FSView Florida Flambeau. I'm your host, Ben Meyerson. I'm a staff writer for FSView, and today I'm joined by another staff writer for the FSU sports section, Logan. Grutchfield. You can expect these live streams for a number of Florida State games for the rest of the regular season, and you can find these streams on our Twitter page at FSView Sports. First of all, welcome, Logan. Thanks for coming on the second ever live stream. And what a game to do this for. This might be the game of the year for Florida State, Logan. What do you think? What are your thoughts after this game?
Hey, Ben, thank you so much for having me on. The fact alone, I think one thing that really just encapsulates this experience for me is seeing the Green Vipers come in against the No.7 team in the country. It's just mind-boggling the more that I think about it. It really is. You know, for all the hype that we heard about the pack line defense that Virginia was going to bring this game, you know, it really Florida State just kind of bullied them, especially in that first half. After that, 6-2 lead they got out to, this was just, it was all FSU, save for maybe 3 to 5 minutes in the second half to start. It was just FSU had their number both on offense and both on defense. I think this is probably, in my mind, the most complete effort that FSU has put in conference play for sure this season.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Logan. I think this could be one of those defining games of the season when we go back and look at it. Florida State's coming off this two-week hiatus, their second 2-week hiatus. They come back in a really close game against Wake Forest, and a team they have no business in that game being as close as it was, and then they come back and blow out the best team in the ACC. What a ride for this team. And you were at the game tonight, Logan. So before we get into everything, I just want to ask you, what was the vibe at the Tuck? How excited were the people to see this team? What was the energy around them?
At first, it was loud. It was loud. I'm always amazed coming here, even as a fan, how loud it gets, despite the stadium only being at 25% capacity. I felt like I had people screaming in my ear, even just to start. But to start, I think people were just, amped up because we're playing No.7 Virginia. And then as the game went on, it was kind of crazy to see, the fans almost disrespecting this team. They were doing the overrated chant and everything. It was just, I'd say it was up there with, if you recall from last year, the game against Louisville, where Louisville came in and just got stomped. And it was kind of a similar situation. Florida State was below them in the rankings. I'd say that it was really comparable to that. I'd say, if you had just on almost a scaled down way, just because there's not as many fans here. But I think that's the best comparison that I can give. It was really, this place was as amped as I've seen it all season.
Yeah, and that's awesome to hear. And I've gotten the opportunity to go to a few games this year myself, and the energy is unreal. With everything going on this season, with the limited capacity, with everything going on, fans are still as excited as ever for this Florida State team, and they come out in droves for them. So I do want to get into a few things just here to start off. Going into this game, something really interesting I saw that kind of stuck out to me, and I think define the ACC in a lot of ways in the recent past, is that Florida State and UVA have combined for the last 3 No.1 seeds in the ACC tournament, and this year it looks like it's going to be 4 straight years. So these two teams are really the class of the ACC recently, and I think if you talk to the casual fan about the ACC, maybe they don't bring up Florida State as much as they should, but they shouldn't be overlooking this team anymore. This is a team that's not just at the top and the class of the ACC, but they're one of the best programs in the entire country now.
I completely agree, and I'm sure that for Leonard Hamilton, if people still aren't really catching on to what's going on in Tallahassee, he's like, "That's great, just let us keep doing our stuff, and so we can do like what we just did tonight, where we'll come in and just totally beat the brakes off you." And he takes all these opponents seriously. I was listening to his comments in the post-game press conference. I was really he stressed the respect that he had for Virginia. You were in there too, Ben, at least three, four times if I had to guess. And if I think that one of the big takeaways that is just fresh in my mind from this game, it's definitely true looking at Florida State basketball throughout the season, is just the amount of game planning that goes into each one of these matchups from Coach Ham and the coaching staff. It cannot be understated, especially against a team like Virginia that I think if you are not on the ball offensively for sure against this stout defense, but even defensively, he was saying we don't have the luxury of choosing what we can stop against UVA. And I think they get all the headlines for, pack line, and it's worked. But, they're really going through every single aspect of all of these games, or of their opponents' games, their attacks on offense, and then their approach on defense. And I think this is just, I would chalk up a lot of FSU's success to that. And I think that's what will propel them forward. One last point that I want to get on. I think this game, if you're a real stat head, probably there's a lot of kind of fun little tidbits that you could walk away with. And Florida State has played the second fewest ACC games in the conference. They've got the second most wins. So I think that this is, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I could see both of these teams going very far in the ACC tournament. I don't think that's far out of anybody's minds right now.
Oh, I think absolutely. I think these two teams you could very well see playing each other for the ACC championship when it's all said and done. And maybe we just got a preview of what that matchup is going to look like, But I want to go back to something you just said, which was that the what this coaching staff had to do to game plan for this, not just with a short turnaround. You have 2 days in between the game. You barely have 21 off day in between the Wake Forest and the Virginia game, and then they come back so strong like they did. And if you were listening to the players after the game in the post-game press conference, they were getting all kinds of questions about how did they prepare versus UVA and what did they think they saw. And every single time they were asked a question about matching up against this team, they credited the coaching staff. They credited the preparation that this staff has kind of not just instilled in them, but the preparation that the staff clearly put in ahead of this game. I think it was really, really impressive what we saw out of Leonard Hamilton tonight. Of course, his name is on the ballot for the 2021 Naismith Hall of Fame, and very much deservedly so. And tonight is just another example of why he's not just one of the best now recruiters in the country, how things have come in the past few years, but he's a amazing X's and O's coach. And I think that's completely underrated. People do not talk about that enough with Leonard Hamilton.
I totally agree. Just thinking back to that press conference, it was, we had MJ Walker and Raekwon Gray in there, and they were just saying, I credit Coach Jones, or Coach Hamilton for, putting me in this situation where they seem to know these players' strengths and weaknesses as well, if not better, than these players do. And one other thing, Ben, you talk about the success they have in X's and O's and just game planning for everything that might get thrown at them in a certain game. I also think that, just kind of the ability to communicate with players. And it can be, I can think from a player's perspective, it might be tough to come in and say, well, I'm still a major part of this team, even if I'm not playing, 20, 25, 30 minutes a game. I could see that being tough at virtually any other program in the country. So I think to then get that kind of buy-in, and as we saw reflected there from just up and down the roster, it seems like I think that's a critical part. It's like if you can have kind of the backing of your coaches to just, do what's expected of you, what that is. I think that, Florida State just out executed Virginia tonight. And I think that when you kind of have that, I don't want to say coaches' blessings, but kind of the buy-in from the coaches and the ability to let you just do your thing on the court. I think that the ability to communicate that to the players, it really can't be understated as well.
No, it can't be. And I think that's the key to this team this year is that everyone's buying in, and they all really fight for each other. I mean, it's just multiple times throughout the season, you'll see players will want to come off the court because they want other guys to play. That's the kind of buy-in you don't see out of teams almost ever. And Florida State, it seems like year after year, has this buy-in from all their players, not just the guys who have been there for a few years. And something I want to get into is I think coming into this matchup, all the analysts and all the big college basketball fans were talking about how FSU's offense would pair up against this like you're talking about, this pack line defense. And I think what Florida State did tonight is they showed, and Leonard Hamilton showed, is they can game plan against anybody, and they can win in a lot of different types of ways, even though, this team a lot of times is, when they shoot well from three, they're going to win, of course. But it was that, and then also they were able to handle that UVA defense so well to where, I believe MJ Walker was talking about in postgame, Raekwon Gray and Scotty Barnes, when they drive to the basket and they have those defenders collapse in on them, they can see over those players and make the best play every single time because they're such good playmakers and they have such a good feel for the game. And then because of that, when you're hitting as many shots as FSU was tonight, the offense is going to explode, no matter if you're playing UVA or any other ACC team for that matter.
I completely agree. And then, my understanding of the pack line might be flawed as well. So Ben, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like, it's not super geared to handle players, just like killer shooters, killer 3-point shooters, especially. And Florida State was just shooting the ball lights out tonight. I think especially after that first kind of hiatus that they had after that Clemson game. This is way back when now in December. Yeah. They've just seemed like they've shot the ball, not really fantastic, almost every single game. So, and I don't think tonight was, not like the astronomical margins that we saw in the NC State game, but that's enough, I think, to certainly keep them in the game. And that's what, I think when it comes down to execution, there's not much room for error against a defense like that. You start shooting, you start falling under, I'd say 40% or something like that. I think that's where a game can get sideways really fast. And I don't think we ever really saw a slip in FSU's game. Virginia got out to that 6-2 lead or something, was the most that I can recall them ever being ahead in this one. And then it was just all FSU. I think they are kind of able to, and again, Coach Hamilton talked about just the aggressiveness that was needed to handle Virginia. I think that aggressiveness was very clear on offense, especially I thought in transition, it almost seemed like they had a 2-second head start. There were so many times where the ball would just be right there. And then it's like, oh, well, you can't really have a pack line defense when the guy with the ball's 2 steps ahead of you. So
yeah. Well, and I think you're so right about what you're saying about the pack line defense. Sorry to cut you off, Logan, but
you're good.
I think when you're shooting as well from three as FSU was, it's going to destroy that pack line defense. But when you have players as tall as FSU has, that just exploits it even further because you have these great playmakers who can just do whatever they want. Raekwon Gray time after time in that game would just back down whoever he wanted to in the post, turn around and hit that same little layup he was hitting the entire game. And then when you're doing that and you're shooting as well as you were, Florida State was shooting 54% from three from this game. So when you're shooting as well as that, and you have those playmakers who are so tall and who UVA just can't match up against, it just makes it just breaks that defense, I think.
You're absolutely right. And then I want to go back to just what you're talking about with those 3-pointers. Talking about MJ Walker specifically, he was not hitting just easy threes. No. I think he probably hit 2 or 3 from that point on. I'm looking at the logo right now, so I'm going to do my best to explain it. Where there's kind of the feather that has the FSU logo on it. You go a little bit to the left of that, and then on the very edge where the black is, and he was hitting it from there. I think he probably hit it from that exact spot. At least twice, possibly 3 times in this game. They weren't hitting easy threes. And that's just a testament to I think the ability of FSU to seemingly shoot the ball from all over the court. And I mean, I think they really just maximized the opportunities that they had. I don't know that just when they had the ball, they were able to get buckets, get 3-pointers. And I think against a pack line defense like Virginia, that was critical. And now I want to then talk about briefly what I saw on FSU's defense. And Ben, I want you to stop me if you think I'm getting out of pocket here, because I might make a comparison that you think is completely ridiculous. But bear with me
Go
here.
ahead. Go ahead.
One thing that I recall from the UNF game, I realize this is going to be, is it seemed like when they played UNF, it was like, okay, if you shoot 70, 80%, something just outrageous from three, you could beat us, but we're not really going to give you anything else besides that. And that was what I thought I saw, especially in the paint. I realized, and maybe it was just early on, but it seemed like whenever Virginia was in the paint, they were dunking. And I was like, what is this? But they weren't really giving them, they were making it work for anything inside the 3-point line, especially in the paint, besides being like right under the basket. For the first half of that game, Virginia had 3-pointers, and that was it, for the first 11 minutes of the game. So I think their FSU's ability to really just lock down all but some of the most extreme portions on the court, I think that then just amplified some of the success that they had on offense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it was just like, we'll dare you. If you shoot something ridiculous from three, you got us, but we're just going to dare you to do that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, and I'm glad you brought this up, because this is what I wanted to talk about next. Because I think going into this game, all the national coverage, all the attention surrounding this game wasn't surrounding Florida State's defense, but maybe it should have been, because while they haven't played up to this level recently, what they just did tonight against Virginia is, I mean, it's unlike anything they've done this season. That's the best defensive half that Florida State has played by far and away this season. Like you were saying, they had just, I think, like 3-pointers at one point, that 8 turnovers by the end of the first half. So, you do that against a team as good as Virginia is, and then, and like we were talking about earlier, that just leads into the transition game for Florida State. They can take even more advantage there, and because they have so many they just have better athletes than UVA does. They can drive down the court, and they create so many second chance opportunities tonight. It's not just that they were getting turnovers, but they would take those turnovers and turn them into amazing possessions on the other end, and they would really get the most of them. And Florida State's defense tonight defined this game. If I was worried coming out of that second half, a few minutes in, that we would start to say to ourselves that this was a tale of two halves. I was really afraid there for a second, but then this team just walked in. I mean, it seemed like the entire game they decided that, we're going to take away UVA's 2 best scorers, and then everyone else just has to beat us. And that worked out really well for Leonard Hamilton tonight. I mean, like you're saying earlier, especially for like that UNF game like you're talking about, that they want teams to make the hardest shot possible. They're going to force teams into the hardest shot possible. And, while that was happening a lot tonight, I also think the athleticism, the length of this team, the just with how smart they are with passing lanes and doing all the little things right, that is what seemed to really add up and put this team over the top for this victory tonight.
You're completely right. And then just as a side note to that UNF comparison, Coach Ham talked about just the success Virginia has as a 3-point shooting team. And UNF, I know, has some just outrageous game plan where that's like it's a major component of it. So I probably forgot to add that context. But no, Ben, I think you're absolutely right. Just kind of in every aspect of the game, gosh, I can't remember. I saw somewhere on Twitter going into the second half, it was like every statistic besides like assists or something like that, FSU was leading there. And it was just, strategically, obviously, I think it was a victory. Going back to, when I was worried, just as you were, I remember thinking in the second half, I'm like, okay, Florida State's up by 20. What kind of catastrophe would have to occur, for them to drop the ball on this one? And, I think sometimes we've seen a couple leads slip away from FSU, but nothing of this scale. And then I was like, oh my goodness, coming into the second half, first of all, I want to give a shout out to Kihei Clark, who is that 5'9" point guard
Oh my
for
God, he was excellent
a
tonight.
beast. Yeah. And I was like, first of all, I mean, I tell girls I'm 5'9" on a date. I'm like, is that what I look like on the court? Like, oh my goodness, especially against FSU. They're one of the tallest teams in the country. And I was just, I mean, he really played his butt off, I think, against a team that is just as big as Florida State. And I think that, Virginia kind of showed, when teams can beat FSU on defense, it's with just speed like he had and like Trey Murphy had. Sam Hauser showed a little bit of that. I know he's a bigger guy, but that was kind of the weapon that seemed to elude them for much of this game because FSU's got big guys, but they're not big and clunky like somebody like Chris Kamaji is probably the most recent example I can think of. Just complete all around. And then FSU's ability, I was really pleased with Coach Ham. I was, first of all, I was really surprised when he called that timeout like a minute into the second half. And I think, and then he called, it was either that or the media timeout, like 4 or 5 minutes in. And that was when, right at the end of Virginia going on that 13-0 run to open up the second half. And I think that was a good just refresher point, and it kind of just getting everybody back down to earth. And I think Exhibit A of that is Sardar Calhoun, was like shooting out of his mind after that. But Balsa Koprivica was shooting out of his mind too. These guys that, I mean, they were stout on defense and then turning around, putting a little bit up on offense. I mean, I think when it comes to depth, that's just exactly what you would want in a game like this. And especially against an opponent like this. So I think that was just a great turnaround moment in that second half.
Oh, absolutely. I think that was a huge moment for this team. I think, like you're saying, coming out of that second half, they may have come back down to earth a little bit after having such an electric first half. And UVA went on that run and they brought the game to within 7 points. But then Florida State went on that 20-2 run. So, that was excellent. But I want to go back to something you were just saying and someone you just brought up and someone I would really love to talk a lot about. And I think we talked about him a little bit on your podcast, Talking Chop. By the way, shout out Talking Chop. Check out Logan's podcast. He does a great job on there. But I want to talk about Balsa Koprivica. He didn't play last game at Wake. It was really strange what happened Saturday. It was like minutes before the game we found out that he's not going to be playing, and then later I think Coach Hamilton says in the media session after the game that he had sprained or twisted his ankle or something like that, and they're shooting around in that morning, and it didn't seem like anything had happened to him at all in the second half of this game tonight. Cause I mean, he was excellent. And in a lot of ways, I've been starting to think that he's the X factor of this team. And, when they're missing him, especially against Wake, I think, that's the type of game on Saturday where if they have Balsa in the first place, maybe it just doesn't even go to overtime. So, I think tonight he showed out how important he is as a player on this team, not just because of those great plays he had on offense, because that was electric tonight. And I think Florida State really needed some of those big, high energy moments when they were struggling coming out of the second half. But Balsa on defense is so important for this team because, being the big on Florida State, you have to switch constantly. You have to go into smaller players. You have to be comfortable guarding any type of player, any size player. And tonight he had so many different defensive challenges thrown at him, and he really held his own.
I agree. And I think just against a team that is really versatile like Virginia, he did a great job. Handling bigger guys, handling guys. I don't know that we ever saw him on like Kihei Clark or anything like that.
No.
But but we did see him, definitely hold his own really in all aspects of the game. And Coach Ham shouted out, I think just the training staff for getting him rehab and getting him back into this one so quickly. I don't know that, their impact can be understated. And again, Ben, I appreciate you shouting out Talking Chop. We get guests like Ben on every so often, that really, make up for whatever errors I might be making. But again, I want to then go back to, I know sometimes when I'm on there, I think I tend to maybe be a little overcritical of this FSU defense. I mean, I feel like I'm like, 30 points were scored by this team's guards. I feel like I repeat that every single week. and sometimes it's deserved, but I think tonight, they really kind of put people like me to bed, if that makes sense. I think this defense just really showed out. I think they're just how they made Virginia work for every opportunity inside the 3-point line, and especially in the paint, really blew me away tonight. Like, if I'm going to be totally honest with you, in terms of just execution, I can't really think of many areas on that defensive end where FSU screwed up, or wasn't as good as I'd like to have seen. I mean, really, in this game, I can't think of anywhere. I mean, I'm just kind of looking at stat broadcast right now. I guess the only player that I would have liked to see more out of is Raekwon Evans, who started. He played, nearly half the game, didn't end up scoring at all. I mean, he did pick up a few rebounds, a few assists. I think his, still on the stat sheet, it wasn't a total dud. But, I think probably this was not, this is not the kind of outing that you would want to see in a game, especially where you get the Green Vipers and it seems like everybody else is kind of, playing out of their mind. Maybe it just wasn't his night, but I would have liked to see a little bit more out of him. I know he's been playing pretty well as of late too. So this is kind of a, pump the brakes moment, I think. But overall, especially on defense, I don't mean to get too far sideways of what we were originally talking about, but this is just, I think, a complete effort by just everybody, and coaching staff included.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think I think you made a good point. We could have maybe seen a little more out of Raekwon tonight, but I think also what him and Raekwon Gray do so well is all those little plays and those things that really don't show up on the stat sheet. So I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt, just because I think if you watch throughout the game, there's so many times that a player will make a whether it was that. I believe it was Wyatt Wilkes who had that deflection, or Sarah Calhoun just making all these plays. It's all these little plays that add up in the end to where they just overpowered teams. And something I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit, and something I've been thinking about, and I think I saw on Twitter post game, is that going in, people may have been expecting this Virginia team to bully Florida State on the defensive end. But it was really the other way around tonight. Florida State bullied Virginia. They, like you're saying earlier, they just didn't let them get any shot that they wanted. I think by the end of the first half, by the end of the first 10 minutes, they had like 5 field goals or something. I mean, they forced Virginia into so many bad plays. They made them turn the ball over at so many key moments. Can you talk a little bit about, and this is something that we talked about on your podcast, again, Talking Shop, and you do an excellent job, Logan. People should really check it out. I'm not just saying that. You do an excellent job, man. But something we were talking about was, we want to see this team put their foot on the gas pedal better. I think there is no better example than this game. Obviously, since what was happening in the second half, how UVA cut into the lead, this is a really good example of that. But I mean, just looking at the way the first half was played, not only did they came out a little maybe slow at first, but once they got rolling, UVA couldn't do anything to stop this team. And I know, Tony Bennett tried his best at halftime, and he was talking to the refs a lot throughout the game. But it didn't seem like UVA could do anything, or they had any answers for this Florida State team. It seems like, I think this is, and this is my first season covering Coach Hamilton, but, for me, this is the best X's and O's game I've seen from him by far.
Yeah, I think you do a great job there, Ben, assessing just, what was going right for FSU tonight. In terms of, and I mean, everybody said it in the press conference, that was the first half set the tone, and I think that, we could kind of see them. I mean, obviously, offensively, I know there was at least a couple. There was a big 20-2 run in the second half. I want to say that in the first half, there was at least one early on as FSU kind of, they were down 6-2. And I think maybe we're giving that a little more attention than we need to. I mean, it's 6-2. It's like the first 2 minutes of the game.
Yeah, that's fair. They won.
But,
I believe they won on a 17-0 run in the middle of that first half. So
yeah.
just like you were saying, maybe that 6-2, I guess run. You might put that in air quotes, but that might have been a little overstated because Florida State. I mean, if you look at all the shots, especially in that first half that UVA hit, those are all really, really tough shots that Florida State probably wants UVA taking. I think, in terms of an execution standpoint, yes, Leonard Hamilton, how that first half went, I think he would tell you, if he was being very frank, that UVA did everything that they wanted them to do.
Oh, certainly. You're 100% correct. And I think, that 17-0 run then is, obviously there was multiple points where FSU just really sticking it to Virginia, and Virginia didn't really seem to have, that much of an answer. I think that, looking at, there's obviously games like the one against NC State, I forget, where they had like the highest shooting percentage that they've ever had. I think games like that are obviously great offensively, but we're not talking about a top 25 team in NC State. No disrespect to North Carolina State, but them and Virginia, it's just different. I think in terms of the competition being faced, and against a team like Virginia that has the potential to really stifle you on defense, and also, I mean, has a solid offensive attack. I think we saw that against who they play on Saturday, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And so I think that part of that is limiting mistakes that can really, nip whatever progress you have in the bud. And I think that one great job was what we saw, only 3 turnovers in the first half. Virginia then, and then aggression then on the opposite side of that, it's just a number. But then Virginia had 3 turnovers in like the first 6-7 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
So, it's almost like if you can put pressure on your opponents to make mistakes and then avoid making those same mistakes on, that side of the ball. Obviously, I'm probably boiling this down. Of course, basketball would be easy if that's all you could do, But I think Florida State really just did that. There really wasn't much in the way of mistakes that I can think of. I mean, quite honestly, I think we definitely do a good job of trying to just be, accurate about what we see. We're not on here to just, say, oh, FSU is the greatest team ever. But This was just a hell of a game. Like, honestly, for FSU, I'm having a hard time thinking of like, oh, they could have done this better or that better. I really am.
Oh yeah, I think for anyone like you who maybe is more critical of this team and was looking for certain things throughout the season, this answered a lot of those questions you had about this team. And I think one of the things that stuck out to me, not just in this game, but obviously in these last, I think 6 or 7 games, is RaeQuan Gray. I mean, he's. And I think Jay Billis said at the end of the broadcast, he thinks that he's the best player on this Florida State team. And, while I think that's maybe a different discussion for a different day, and that would be a really interesting one, I think what RaeQuan has proven is his value is just so important for this FSU team. I mean, what he does with all the little things, like I was saying earlier, but then not only that, it seemed like at any point in the first half or wherever when FSU needed a bucket, that's who they were going to. If a lot of times that might be MJ Walker, and he's still doing that, of course. But I mean, it seemed like time after time they would just get rake the ball on the low block and just say, "Hey, turn around and beat your man," and he would do it every single time.
Oh, you're 100% right. And I don't want to, get too weird here with this, but I feel like in some ways he's kind of put up some of the production that I almost anticipated seeing out of somebody like Scotty Barnes this season, or just kind of filling it. I think MJ Walker is kind of turning into one of the number 1 scoring options, just consistently, on an average possession, he'd be up there in terms of who's going to, put the ball in the hoop. But I think RaeQuan Gray is kind of turning into that number 2 in some ways. And then also I think his value on defense, what we saw, just He's kind
Yeah.
of whacking the ball all over the court on some of these inbounds passes. Really making life difficult for UVA on offense tonight as well. I really think that he has turned into a very complete player, and probably not one that I would have said this about, had I watched him and watching him in his freshman year. I think really just his development has been really something to watch. And I mean, he's been killing it the last 4 or 5 games. I know he's been putting up like 16 points a game, plenty of assists, obviously doing quite a bit on defense, just all over the court. He really kind of seems to have stepped into his own to start this year. And not even to start this year. I mean, we're kind of in the meat of the schedule at this point.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's really become somebody that you can rely on. And I don't want to say that as a knock on somebody like Scotty Barnes. I think Scotty Barnes has still had a heck of a year. I can't really complain about what he's done after that, layup against Wake and against that shot that he had against Indiana in overtime. His just clutch gene, I think, is through the roof. But
absolutely. And sorry to cut you off, but I just want to say really quick, I feel like, while it might not be showing up now, I feel like with Scotty, it's the kind of thing where the deeper we get into the season, when we're in the ACC tournament, the NCAA tournament, I think that's when Scotty's going to really show out. And it's not just because he's considered this freshman one and done player, this star, whatever. I think every time Scotty has been asked to, he stepped up to the moment and he's blown away expectations. I mean, I think I almost went into a full-on panic when I saw them not call a timeout at the end of that last game, and just Scotty went straight up the court, and I was like, oh my God, what's happening here? And then you realize that this team trusts Scotty Barnes so much. I mean, the trust they have to put into him, and I know we're talking about Virginia, but for that last play, that Wake game, that you don't see that out of teams often, to put that kind of confidence into a freshman and that have that much confidence in him, and especially not a Leonard Hamilton team. I mean, that's amazing to me.
Yeah, you're completely right. And I hope I didn't sound like I was, saying, oh, what's the problem with Scotty Barnes or something like that. He's still been a heck of a player for this team, but I think like just some of the, maybe earlier game production that, you might have wanted to see out of him. I think that Raekwon Gray has maybe filled that void a little bit. And I mean, in any case, you could kind of then delve into a, player argument there. But I think in any case, from a team perspective, to have somebody that is just, can kind of be relied upon at all points in the game, like Raekwon Gray has just been really, I don't want to say a godsend for this team, but it's been a just, I'm trying to think of the right word here. Like just that kind of stability is just critical, I think, to a lot of this team's success.
Oh, absolutely. I think what Raekwon's been doing, especially recently, and I think that should be overstated, if anything. I mean, recently he's been excellent for this team, and he really is, I guess, like you're saying, filling in some of that Scotty Barnes production that you would be expecting, especially earlier in the season. And Raekwon, in a lot of ways, is he kind of has that Draymond Green almost role, if we want to go professional.
That's
here,
the role that he likes. We were calling him. I remember we'd call him like Walmart Zion. He's like, no, call me Draymond.
Yeah, call me Draymond, and you should be. But I also think he's a lot more offensively rounded than even Draymond Green was, especially coming out of college. But I think you look at his defensive skill set, you can pair that up with Draymond, but then his offensive skill set, it's so unique. Whether it's handling the ball, getting down low, just dominating with his body. There's so many different types of ways that he can win, and I think for Florida State, when you spread out the floor like they want to, when you put out all the shooters on the court that they do at certain times, having that type of player, that's what really makes the offense move and groove, and that's what really keeps them rolling, I think.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think tonight he definitely did, in my mind, a great job. This was also expressed by Coach Ham later on, of just kind of using his body to really create disruption on the Virginia offensive end, and then being able to then finish that instead of just I'm gonna kind of bully you, and then what's that going to turn into? I think then his ability to finish that is really, like you said, it's unique. And then just to move as well as he does for a bigger guy, is, he's got a lot of skills. It's seemingly just all around.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, something I want to segment into as we're talking about him is, I've been thinking a lot about this, about for this team this year, and we talked about it on your podcast, was that I think Leonard Hamilton may have a hard time determining who the best five players on this team are, and at the end of games, I'm sure it will vary depending on matchup to matchup, but I think it'll be really interesting to see how he utilizes that last player in their rotation. Because if you look at it, I think if you're building the perfect 5-man lineup for FSU at the end of games, you're of course going to have Balsa in there. If you're playing against another big, you're going to have MJ in the game. You're going to have Raekwon Gray in the game. You're probably going to have Scotty Barnes too. So, and just tell me if you disagree with any of those. But who do you think would be that fifth guy for this team? Because I think there's a lot of candidates, quite frankly, and it'll depend on night to night and matchup to matchup. But whether it's Anthony Polite or Sadar Calhoun or Wyatt Wilkes or name the name, I think any number of players could fit into that last spot at the end of that lineup.
I mean, I think that if you had asked me this before tonight, I think just going on this season's performance alone, I would have said Anthony Polite. He seemed to be kind of just the Mr. Reliable in that number 5 spot. But I think honestly, after Wyatt Wilkes has certainly had his moments too. I don't want to discount what he's had, especially in that Louisville game. I think that was kind of his. That was really indicative of the trust that Coach Ham has in him. And he said as much after that game. It was like, just he trusts Wyatt to know where he's going to be at all times, and then to kind of make the plays when they fall his way. But I think after tonight, especially to get back to, what we just saw, you can make a case for Sadar Calhoun, and prior to this, it was like, and I think he's kind of I don't want to say a victim, but it's a kind of a good problem to have for FSU that you've almost got. And I know you and Thomas talked about this on your last episode. You've almost got too many good players, and that is the best. I don't know that any coach is going to complain about that. Obviously for some players it might not be ideal, but it's just he's kind of fallen into that. Where does he fit in at times? Because I haven't seen him start that often this year, whereas I've seen Anthony Polite and Wyatt Wilkes get starts.
Wyatt Wilkes was starting tonight. I mean, and I think just based off what you're saying, I think with Sadar Calhoun, I think he's really understated in a lot of ways. As an athlete, some of the things I've seen him do in game in person is just, I don't think the TV does enough justice for him, because some of the plays I seen him make, I think it was that last game, that Georgia Tech game that they actually lost, where he had that insane alley-oop, where he just jumped out of midair and grabbed the ball out of nowhere. And I agree with you. I think you could easily make the case that Sadar Calhoun should absolutely be in that 5 spot. I mean, we were talking earlier about who you want on this team, just to get a bucket for you at any point, and he could easily be one of those guys on that list of players. I mean, it seems like in all these key pivotal moments in the game, especially tonight. I mean, tonight was the best example of it, but it seems like in a lot of moments in these games, Sadar Calhoun will just hit the 3 that you need. He'll make the transition play that you need. He'll get the steal that you need. He'll do whatever you need for a big moment and for those big momentum shifters, really.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think in terms of just pure physicality, I've seen the most impressive stuff out of him. And you're absolutely right. Just the ability to make a steal, to make a crazy alley-oop like we saw. I'm sorry, a lot of noise going on here in the stadium right now, so I'm getting a little distracted. But there's a lot that he offers. And then I think that he stands to gain quite a bit. Possibly this is looking a little far ahead, but next season, with just with guys graduating, I think he's got, like we saw even with kind of Wyatt Wilkes, he was kind of like, oh, wow, who's this kid, coming in and shooting lights out. And then now he's really kind of becoming an integral part of the FSU offense. I think Sadar Calhoun could kind of shift into that, sort of role next year.
Yeah,
And so I
yeah.
would, or just to have more consistent production, more consistent time on the court, because right now he kind of seems to be the odd man out between Polite and Wilkes. So I'm excited to see, what, obviously this season, I know he's got a lot to offer, but I feel like in the future, then we can really kind of see him do the most that, or really show off.
Oh, absolutely. I think Sadar hasn't gotten enough opportunities to show out. I think, he transferred from the JUCO college before, where he's probably getting a lot of shots. The onus of the offense is on him, and I think it really shows when you see him play, because he just jumps off the page to me. But something I want to do just as we're getting ready to head out here, and kind of the last question I wanted to ask you for tonight, and I wanted to make sure we ended on this, especially after such a big game, is what do you think is the ceiling of this Florida State team? And of course, I think I was talking with our editor last game, Thomas Martinez. He was saying, national championship should be the ceiling for this team, and I think after this game, that feels a lot more real than ever to me.
I completely agree. And I think I always kind of hate prognosticating about these things, but in this case, I've got to agree with you and Thomas. I think after this, being able to, this wasn't just a victory over Virginia. I understand they're much higher in the rankings and all this. We've talked about this, quite a bit tonight. But this was, a shellacking of Virginia. This was not just oh, wow, FSU got lucky at the buzzer. This was, a victory on all fronts, offensive, defensive, off the court kind of game planning, and just, I think also execution as a whole. This was a like we said, one of the most complete victories that FSU has had. And I think if they can play at this caliber consistently, especially in the ACC tournament and especially in the NCAA tournament, I really have a hard time seeing where, they, who could beat them. Just besides like a crazy superstar team, somebody like Gonzaga obviously is just, fantastic all around. But when FSU is playing like this, they're beating their opponent at their own game. They're, maximizing their chances on the offensive end and defensively making it very difficult for the opponent to get those chances. I would have to agree. I think now you got to have the ACC title game in the conversation, especially after you kind of take it to the top dog. And also it maybe does help a little bit that the ACC, especially teams like Duke and UNC aren't just, totally lighting everyone up like they might have previously.
Oh, absolutely. And, I think with this team, what they showed tonight was that more than anything, that the athleticism, the length they have, just the athletes they have on this team, that's going to win them games in March, especially in the NCAA tournament, because when you get late into the tournament, when you get deeper into the tournament, Florida State, almost in every single game, almost like you were alluding to, if they're not playing Gonzaga, they probably have the best athletes on the floor for every single game and the best collection of athletes, definitely. And I think this team it's going to be really interesting to see how they play in March, of course. And I really want to see how Leonard Hamilton gets challenged over the tournament with different matchups and with all the different things they're going to have to deal with, especially playing so many games in such a short amount of time with how deep this team is. I think that's something that could really pay off to where, that they start advancing round after round after round, because Leonard Hamilton's an excellent coach, of course, but also because Florida State has not just some of the best athletes in the ACC, but in all of college basketball. But before we get out here, I just want to give you, Logan, a chance to shout out anything you have upcoming. I know you'll be writing something for this game, and of course, people should check out Talking Chop. Logan does an excellent job on there. But just anything you want to shout out, and then also I just wanted to mention I saw in our comments here someone was asking for a score prediction versus and they're saying it might be 100-45 now. I don't know about that, but we've seen Florida State dip into triple digits at least once this year. So who knows what could happen?
I'm intrigued by that score. Let me hop over the comments here. Score prediction against UM. All right, let me see what I can do for our fans here. I'm gonna say FSU's breaking 90 in that game, and
Okay.
I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say Miami will not be. Just a feeling. But again, Ben, I really appreciate the praise that you have for Talking Chop. It was I took over for Gary, who's now the managing editor, and I felt like I was in over my head when I started. But it really, I think a lot of the success is having guests like you, or I've had plenty of others that really we can kind of delve into the conversation, delve into some of these deeper things. It really makes it as successful as it has been. And so I'm thrilled that you enjoyed it as much as I have. And I think that I am intrigued. The last note that I will get on, I know the cleaning crew is a little anxious for me to get out of here, is it really seems to me like this season, Florida State has kind of just been a victim of, circumstances out of their control. But, it's like they'd have a loss against like somebody like Georgia Tech or Clemson. And then, both times, you got to go on break for a week, and they really, I think that kind of caused them to slip in the eyes of the national media a little bit. Like I was talking to my roommates, and they're just kind of casual fans, but they're like, we're only ranked number 16. We're way better than that.
Yeah. Oh my God. And I want to mention just real quick, I just remembered in my notes that I'm seeing here, when the NCAA just released their latest top 4 rankings for all the teams, Florida State didn't appear on the top 4 for any team.
Unbelievable.
And, I have a feeling we'll see that change, but just before we head out here, I want to shout out Logan. He does an excellent job with Talking Chop, and you should check him out on there and his Twitter. He's a good Twitter follow. So thanks for coming on, Logan. I really appreciate you taking the time after this game. I know you got to head out, so I appreciate you sticking with me here. And everyone can expect our next live stream to be after Saturday's Virginia Tech game. That's at noon, so you can expect that around 2:30. We go after Coach Ham finishes up all of his media and after players finish up, so you can expect that. And thanks again, Logan. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you for having me, Ben. It's a pleasure to be on. Looking forward to be back soon.
All right. Well, like I said, you can catch us next Saturday for Virginia Tech around 2:30 on the same feed that you're seeing this broadcast on. So have a great one, Logan. I'll talk to you soon, man. Thanks.
All right. You as well, Ben.